The intractable problem of our time is not unemployment. It's the idea that we cannot get some people to earn a living wage.
And one must not and should not need a 4-year college degree to achieve the American dream, especially in a time of crisis.
When we launched the Future of Work Grand Challenge, our goal was ambitious. We asked ourselves, how will we rebuild an economy and create a future that works for everyone?
In a new economy, the idea of training, the idea of learning and skilling, this is a lifelong proposition.
Hey, good morning. I'm Dr. Angela Jackson, a managing partner at New Profit. I want to thank you so much for the Jobs for the Future team for this invitation to the Horizon Summit. And before I begin, I want to thank you all who have attended today. I'm a managing partner at New Profit, a 20-year-old national venture philanthropy firm. In my role, I lead the Future of Work strategy. As we've seen in the last year, the future of work has become the present of work. We are at a crossroads now as we think about our economy and how we can either build back better, right? Or we can go back to business as usual. Today in this panel, we'll spend the next 45 minutes sharing what is possible when we think of Americans and the opportunities that might exist for them. We will also think a lot about how can we collaborate across sectors to ensure and all in service of getting people back to work. When we think about the Future of Work Grand Challenge that brought all of us here together, it was really a coming together of unlikely bedfellows. People across philanthropists, foundations, employers, researchers, academics, and most importantly, actual workers who are impacted by the problem of trying to find living wage work in the midst of a pandemic. When we think about this work and how we've decided to do it, we wanted to invest in entrepreneurs and innovators who are thinking about technical solutions to help workers earn while they learn, to skill up for opportunities that can put them on pathways for living wages. Our goal was ambitious in working with our partners at Jobs for the Future, XPRIZE, and MIT Solves. We wanted to create technologies and partnerships with local workforce boards that could get 25,000 people back to work. As we know, this work is impossible to do alone. It takes radical collaboration. It took us coming together with our partners, Walmart.org, Strata Education Network, JP Morgan Chase, Comcast, Annie Casey Foundation, and many, many more partners to ensure that we were creating a program that could be inclusive in creating this Future of Work Grand Challenge. As we get ready to turn to the panel, there's a couple of ideas that I'd like for you to keep in mind. The first is to think about, as innovators, what is the role that we can play in getting people back to work? How do we invest in new technology and de-risk that technology? How do we think about how we can actually get that technology in the arms of the people that need it most? I want to take a moment now and introduce the people that will be on the panel. First, when we're looking here, is Tamisha Mansfield, who is at Jobs for the Future, but she was also one of the early supporters of the Future of Work Grand Challenge. The second thing that we're doing is that we'd love to introduce also with us is Jeffrey Turnigan at the Massachusetts Workforce Board. And then we also have Yvette Ellis, the co-founder and Chief Workforce Development Officer at Charter Help. And then we have Monique Baptiste, the VP of Global Philanthropy at JP Morgan Chase. And I have to just credit Tamisha again in her role as the Vice President for Workforce Innovation at JFF. It's been amazing to partner with you all along this journey on the Future of Work Grand Challenge. What we'll get into the conversation today is really talk about the nuts and bolts of how we did the plan. and how we think about what has changed this past year and a half as it relates to technology. And really, when we think about the racial reckoning and the opportunities that the pandemic has brought on. When we look at the loss of jobs, the rapid technology advancement, what do we think are some of the biggest challenges in workforce today? We'll have this conversation and we have others, and we're really hoping that this will indeed be a conversation. It's important for us to have these conversations across sectors so that we can actually get at the heart of things. For far too long, when you look at workforce and when we talk to our worker advisory board, they tell us that sectors are siloed. They'll go one place for K-12 education, and then when it comes times for rapid reskilling, they may go to a boot camp or they may go to a local community college, and then they're off to work. What we've heard from our frontline worker advisory board is that in their lived realities, they want more transparent systems that they can work across. When we look at the future of work and creating one that works for all, we know that in this day right now that most of us, our children even, will have 12 to 15 career transitions. So when we think about making those pathways more visible and easy to onboard on, we're not just doing it because it's charity. We're doing it in service and a commitment to equity and efficacy. When we make it easier for people to retrain and reskill, we're really talking not about the future of work, but we're talking about the future of us. So with that, I am going to turn this over and first hear from one of our worker advisory board members, and then we will head to the panel. Jeffrey, are you coming on next?
Hello, everyone. I would like to start off by thanking JFF, New Profit, and everyone that made this event possible. Thank you. My name is Michael Russell. I am part of New Profit's Experts Work Advisory Board, and we are a group of workers that serve as co-designers, advisors, and judges to the Future of Work Grand Challenge. I currently work as Goodwill Easter Seals case manager, working with fathers who receive public assistance. These are both single fathers and fathers who are in the home with their children and significant others. I started this work in a volunteer capacity in around 2010, and I was officially hired on as Goodwill staff around 2013. In addition to that work, I also work as a reentry counselor, working with individuals that are coming home from incarceration in areas of training, employment, and support services. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to share a few questions that I've been reflecting on and a few solutions from my perspective in both a personal and professional light. From my personal and professional experience, I see two of the greatest challenges to the workforce as equal access to quality jobs, careers, training, resources, support, regardless of racial demographic, and also accountability to the systems responsible for that inequality. At least two of my personal and professional workforce challenges in the United States have been unequal access to quality training, resources, and support, in addition to low wages that do not sustain a basis for living. I visualize some strong solutions to the workforce barriers. One, strong economic support for the most disadvantaged groups. Strong apprenticeship and training programs supported by both the public and private sector. And strong economic education supported by both the public and private sector. The major supplier of optimism in terms of the future of work comes from all of you, working together to create and implement solutions to the Future of Work Grand Challenge. I, along with my fellow advisory board members, are asking all of you not only to improve on the above named items, but also what each of you see as the greatest challenges to the workforce. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, for your candor, and thank you for just your service and being a part of our Experts Worker Advisory Board. As I mentioned, it has been critical to have advice and feedback from people like Michael to help us as we shape the strategy for the Future of Work Grand Challenge. Now we want to turn to our panel, and I'm so again excited to have Jeffrey Turnigan, the Executive Director of the Massachusetts Region Workforce Board, Tamisha Mansfield, the Vice President for Workforce Innovation, Monique Baptiste, and we also have Yvette from Charter Help. throwing over to you. And I want, Jeff, if you could kick us off, if you think about what is the biggest challenge today in workforce and how can we start to address it?
Thank you, Dr. Jackson, and I appreciate the chance to be joining this panel here. And at first, before I answer, I do want to say I love the concept that you laid out in your opening remarks about radical collaboration, right, and the chance to really bring together different partners, because I think that is what's going to that's exactly what's going to take to solve some of the challenges that are out there. In terms of what we're facing right now, I would say the biggest factor, biggest focus area that we're working on now is something that has been there all along, but has really kind of come to the fore lately, is the idea of not just putting people back to work, but helping them find work that's going to be life-sustaining, living wage jobs, right? And so I think that's why the concept of the Future of Work Challenge and the project that we're working on here is been so exciting, is because it's a chance for us to look and really identify with solution providers what are some of these new emerging jobs that are accessible to all with new technology, with training that's available through new technologies that can really help people earn living wage jobs. And one of the so we're lucky enough to work with people like Dr. Jackson, and also with Yvette Ellis from Charger Help, and some of the work that she's doing in the clean energy sector, and really kind of looking at how do we prepare people for jobs that are emerging in there, and including jobs that really weren't even available or really weren't even jobs back a decade ago. So for us as a workforce board to be able to team up with cutting edge providers to help find these opportunities that are emerging for living wage jobs is something we're really kind of excited about it, and really feel like is part of the biggest challenge, solving the biggest challenge that's out there. And with that might be a good segue to have Yvette talk about some of the work that Charger Help is doing around these emerging good jobs.
Thank you so much for that, Jeffrey. I'm so excited to be here, first and foremost, and any platform to talk about workforce development is exciting for me. Charger Help in particular, we fixed on demand, we fix EV charging stations, and as you know, the EV sector and infrastructure is growing and growing. Lots of money being poured into getting this infrastructure in the ground. So I believe we are right on time with really focusing on the maintenance and repair for the EV infrastructure that's being built and that already exists. As far as workforce development is concerned, Charter Help is very focused on making sure workforce development is a part of what we do, so much so that we weaved it into our business model. So we work with workforce development agencies, programs, centers to ensure that the folks that are participating there have an opportunity to not only learn about this industry, but also train and be hired in this industry. And we think, more than anything, it's an equity, right? It's an equity piece that we have to ensure that while all this money is being poured in and moved around, that equity stays at the forefront of everybody's mind. Because if we don't, we'll look up and for sure have underrepresented communities just totally not a part of the shift that's happening. And we just, that was really what inspired my co-founder Camille and I to build the company. We've built excellent technology. We fix a major problem keeping these EV charging stations online, but also we are serving as an on-ramp for folks to get a middle-class paying job, and we start off at $30 an hour, and we are specifically working with workforce development boards to ensure that the folks that they're connected to, that we have access to them and make sure that they have access to us in applying. So we know that to become maybe an electrical contractor may take 5 years in an apprenticeship program, and those are excellent options, but everyone does not have 5 years to be in a training program. So we train in about 32 days to take care of the software portion of the EV charging station. And then the last thing I'll say is that 90% of the time when an EV charging station is down, it's mainly software, and we can train someone to troubleshoot and fix that, and that's what we plan to do. So we're excited to work with Mass Hire to ensure that their community too, local hire, is a part of all this bringing up that's going to happen in their community, and we want to do this. We are doing this in 8 states currently.
And Monique, I would imagine the funding that your philanthropic, you must be looking for opportunities like Yvette's to really kind of tie into, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the model that I think Yvette that you were just speaking about, especially when we think about how in a real practical way we are learning by doing as a system, it's just essential, right? And it's really the type of models that at JP Morgan Chase Foundation we're constantly looking for, right? Ones that really challenge the bounds of innovation within the public workforce system and can really demonstrate in a very kind of opportunistic way how much further we can push the limits. And I think it's also worth noting that, while there is kind of a bit of a kind of a novelty to the EV space, right, that it's such a growing, emerging field, it still has some really practical applications because of how kind of ubiquitous technology, software, coding, how ubiquitous that is across every industry and every labor market across the country. And so I think, there's a real, especially when I think about some of my friends in the public sector, there's a real, threat to say, oh, well, electronic vehicles, that's not really a thing that we see around here all that much. But you see software everywhere, right? You see software when you're at the checkout counter at the grocery store, right? And so it's everywhere. And so this, I think, presents an opportunity to really extract the set of skills that really transfer across occupations, across industries, and also help define how technologies, digital skill enhancement really can be better infused into our public policy and our practices and our regulations to really make these type of models far more accessible, to your point, Yvette, far more accessible and equitable across communities, around the country. So, we, in a lot of ways, I know from when we think about JP Morgan Chase as a foundation, there's a lot of alignment when we also think about this as an employer, right? We like to say that, sure, we are a major financial services company, but we're also a tech company, right? I mean, everyone has the app on their phone to manage their accounts, and so this work that I think Yvette and the team have kind of pulled together is something that I think we all can really benefit from. And so, as a foundation, we really want to find more ways, and the Grand Challenge is a perfect example of that. Find more ways to continue to push the envelope, to continue to bring the future of work into now, right? Into an application today, and also figure out ways that our public workforce system and our workforce ecosystem more broadly can be advanced and really be responsive to what lies ahead. And I know, Tamisha, you and I have talked a lot about that over and over and over again. So would love for you to chime in here as well.
Yeah, I think one of the things that attracted me to the Future of Work Grand Challenge is really just the attention that it is really placing on public workforce boards, that it is choosing not to bypass the public workforce system, but really partner with it and incent it to do things differently. And I think one of the things that we at JFF have been really surprised by, impressed by, as our team has been working closely in providing the coaching to the workforce boards, is how quickly they've been able to respond and pivot. I think there's this idea and this sense that the workforce system is intransigent, it's not innovative, it can't do work fast. And I think what this project has demonstrated is that this is actually the time to lean into the system, to give it the incentives and the space and the connections that it needs to do things differently. And they've been able to kind of pivot based on the shifts in their local labor market and the new realities of credentials, and also what the expectations that workers have right now. They've been able to rise to that. So I think it's really awesome. And I think the other piece piece in this, when I think about the innovation aspect of it and the transformation aspect of it, is that it was intentional about job quality, right? Like that was an upfront, non-negotiable, that if you were going to do this work, if you were going to make these partnerships, that you had to train people into good quality jobs. And to position workforce boards as a player and a lever in the job quality conversation, I think is really, really huge. And I think it's something that we can look to and we can demonstrate as an example of how workforce boards can really rise and be a player in the job quality conversations and work. That's really important right now. I think when you have like 9 million people who are out of work, people don't want to just train to any old job that's out there. They want to train to jobs that meet their interests and also are going to meet the sustainability needs that they have. And so I really appreciate that and would love to hear more from you, Jeff, about how Mass Hire has really kind of risen to this challenge, right, in this work, and kind of what you are learning and seeing as you're doing this partnership with new technology companies and really placing different demands and expectations on the employer partners that you have.
Well, I think when you had mentioned about being mindful or being intentional about the good jobs being part of the equation, that's so important for local workforce boards to consider and local workforce systems to consider. All too often, we sometimes get a bit reactive or maybe just a bit too much geared towards the low-hanging fruit of those easy to fill or high-need jobs that are, I hate to say dead-end jobs, but often they're very difficult jobs that pay very little with no career advancement opportunities, which what tends to happen, people get in there and they become this working poor, right? Where they're working so many hours just to make ends meet. They never have enough time, energy, or money to better themselves, to go back to school, to take classes in their spare time. And their job itself isn't lending itself to a career ladder. It's not, hey, in a couple of years, you're going to be moving up. There is no ladder to move up. So we're really trying to be intentional, as you're saying, about finding those opportunities to kind of skip over that rung of the ladder and to put people, give them the training and help them, support them in a way that can get them that step or two up the ladder so that they are in a position where, hey, maybe they're not earning in their first job, maybe not as much as a vet's paying at $30 an hour, but maybe they're earning while they're learning an apprenticeship opportunity, or maybe it's an opportunity where they know there's a set next step for them that they're making the connections and the experience. So, but it really takes that intentionality to do that, and not just kind of maybe just kind of drifting locally around where some jobs are at, but really looking at where those emerging jobs are at that kind of meet the sweet spot of not necessarily needing a 4-year degree, while also paying well and having those lower barriers to entry. And one of the maybe the saving graces of the pandemic or hidden upsides is that it's been forcing a lot of institutions, including public workforce systems, to look at new technology and bring on board, or maybe bring on board faster technology-based solutions, which, as long as we can make sure our local residents are able to connect with them, is an opportunity to maybe bring training like charger help training to residents that wouldn't have been able to access it before. And I don't know, Yvette, if that's something you've seen with technology.
Yeah, it's so many companies being born out of this shift. We're particularly in the EV infrastructure, but you have solar, you have wind, you have other parts of clean energy that are growing. And working with Mass Hire, the great part is I'm able to candidly share that there are a lot of jobs coming, and the of that hiring frenzy that will happen. So I take pleasure and pride in alerting the workforce development boards that the tech industry, in the history of tech, is kind of on a pedestal, and you have to be techie, or you may have to be environmental to be a part of this. Well, the things that we are creating is going to affect the masses. So the masses should have opportunity to be a part of what's going on. There's a lot of entry-level jobs being created that does have great growth potential. A lot of training programs happening because it's the Wild Wild West. These are new things that have never happened. So we're not talking about things that have been happening and you have to, and we're good just in our country in particular of creating barriers. Chartered Help is focused on removing barriers. People ask all the time, like, do you have a reentry program for folks that have been incarcerated? No, we don't have a reentry program, but we also don't have a barrier saying that because you've been incarcerated, you cannot apply. It doesn't have to be so focused. We just have to remove barriers so people can apply. And of course, in different areas, there'll be restrictions, but at Chartered Help in particular, we're saying we will train you, and we will see more and more that tech companies in particular will have to train folks. And we have to push as workforce development boards, because I come from a workforce development background, we will have to push to be a part of that. Otherwise, we will move on with this kind of cherry picking of folks that we want in, this legacy giving of jobs, these things that happen. You'll have certain folks from certain socioeconomic backgrounds that because they watched it their entire life, right? They could afford to drop out of college and just know how to code. They can afford to drop out of college and just go into a job. I have many friends that work for Facebook, for example, that didn't necessarily go to college, which is a great opportunity, but everybody is not given that privilege. So I think, again, it goes back to equity. It goes back to being able to identify privilege, and it goes back to us keeping that in the forefront when we think of development of jobs. For Chartered Help on our end, we are working hard with our other founders that we know, incubators, accelerators that we're a part of, to really, really encourage people to consider the Workforce Development Board agency programs as really a great asset, a great avenue to find and source talent. At the very least, recruitment, right? It doesn't mean you have to hire. And on the other end, I'm privileged to be able to work with Jeff and his team and remind them that on the tech end, when companies come and want to hire, some of the maybe red tape that is on the workforce development side won't be tolerated very long, right? We're going to have to get quicker. We're going to have to figure out systems that maybe in the past worked because we were hitting those low-hanging fruit. Excuse the siren. Those low-hanging fruit that Jeff talked about. If we're going to reach a little higher, we're going to have to perform at maybe a faster rate because tech goes fast, right? So by the time you train someone and get someone in a job, there's a new iteration of whatever you train for. And so everybody's going to have to move a little faster. Everybody's going to have to give for this to be able to end up being an equitable situation. So it's more than just technology on the line. Really, how our country does workforce development has to change. And workforce development boards and groups have not, I've heard it called the Dennett toy bin, which hurt me because I come from workforce development. And this is not just folks fresh out of high school. This is not just folks that second chance programs. These are really experienced workers that really will bring value to a technology company where you may have a lot of education, a lot of technical skills, but don't have experience. So it's a lot of things on the line that I think we can benefit from. And I think we are winning working with workforce development centers. I'm personally really excited about showing the rest of the world like what kind of gems really are found in these centers that are waiting for these opportunities. So I'm excited to be the advocate for working with workforce development programs to get really great talent, not any talent, really great talent.
Yeah. I think one of the things that is a learning, I think, for us in this, and I think Yvette, I think you're unique, I think, in terms of the solutions because you come to it with a workforce background. But one of the things that we're also seeing is that this is a really huge opportunity for tech entrepreneurs as they are creating solutions to do them in partnership with the people who are going to be the end users, right? So if we're going to have tech innovation, you have to center the people who are actually going to use it. And I think one of the things that we've seen in this is that a lot of the tech solution companies didn't really have any idea, right, about the public workforce system. This was their first entree while they're developing these training entities and tech platforms. They had no connection to that system, right? And this in many ways is innovative and in some ways like revolutionary, that like as you're creating a solution, work with the people who are going to use it on the other end. Otherwise, how do you know what you are developing is going to solve anything? Right. And so I think that's another kind of like lesson learned that we are seeing from working in this. And I would really, I think, also like to know more from you, Jeff, like what are the lessons that you are seeing from that you are hearing, and what are the lessons that you're also experiencing or being shared with you from the other workforce boards that you're partnering with? Like, what are the aha moments that are coming out of this?
Yeah, certainly. How technology is accessed is a big deal. One of the things that we're very mindful of is just the fact that not everyone has access to reliable access, and so we're lucky enough in Massachusetts, at least, that our state has invested into a program called Mass Connect, which is actually providing Chromebooks and internet routers and such, so that people can connect, that we're not leaving anyone behind. And I'll turn it back over to Monique about JP Morgan. And so I know that you've invested not only in your own kind of internal capacity, but this must be an area of connecting people with technology that's front and center.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we're trying to think of all the creative ways to advance kind of this connectivity and advance access to, the tools that people need to gain these skills. I think, Yvette, you made a good point about the path for everyone is different, right? The time horizon for folks is different. Not everyone is getting the coding class in middle school, right? Not everyone has stable internet or has access to the how-to books and guides to be self-taught. And so I think this is just a great opportunity for us to kind of collectively look at what are all the innovations that we really need to think about. It's interesting. I think in many of our communities, we see this kind of dichotomy that's kind of codified in our language, right? It's workforce and tech talent, right? Like that there's, as if these two things cannot coexist, cannot align, cannot be the same thing, right? And I think this grand challenge, I think, goes right at the heart of that, right? That goes at the heart of, the equitable issue and equitable access issue and equitable opportunity issue that I think all of our communities are really grappling with. And so I think when we think about our investments, we're constantly thinking about how do we support digital skill acquisition. We're thinking about that as an employer. How do we as an employer allow and support our own employees with this idea of lifelong learning? Because as soon as we know that, in a lot of ways, tech skills can be perishable, right? Like that, a new software program is going to come along right around the corner. And so we're actually talking about how do workers adopt a principle that allows them to constantly refresh their skills, to constantly think about what's new, what's cutting edge, where is this going? And I think the biggest piece of this is how can the systems now respond to that change in mindset? And so, I think this is why this project is so very important. I think there is a real opportunity for us to begin to, push how we're thinking about work, push how we're thinking about workers, and push how we are thinking about workforce systems to just be much more nimble, responsible, and collaborative with business and with workers to kind of be the fill that connects these two sides of the equation. So it's really, I know for us, we were eager to invest in this work because of the fact of, the things to learn from these models are infinite. And so we're really looking forward to, where this goes and how far it can be we can take it. And I mean, it's, I think about like the words that my grandmother used to say, right? Like if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always gotten. And so this is our opportunity to do things a little differently. And especially in this really robust public policy environment that we're experiencing in the workforce education and training space, now is the right time for us to test new things.
Yeah, and I think one of the challenges is that sometimes with innovation, and I forget, it may have been Yvette that said sometimes, hey, when new things come out, who tends to be able to access them, right? It's the people that are already kind of doing well enough to be able to have kind of the luxury of time and energy to be able to access new things. So being thoughtful about how are we making sure that these opportunities aren't just going, to the people that already have had opportunities and have had a chance to make their headway, and making sure that we're really able to bring these to a broad variety of people, including people that maybe haven't traditionally learned online, right? This is a new technology-based world that we're kind of entering with workforce development, and we need to be able to make sure that we're supporting people. So whether it provides, some extra coaching assistance to people, sometimes I think it's important to remember that with technology, ideally the technology frees up staff to be able to provide more of a human experience, right? So being able to be able to check in on people, hey, how's it going? How's the training happening? Are you getting what you need? Or if they see somebody falling behind on the platform, being able to reach out and connect with them. And so hopefully we're able to leverage technology to make sure that everyone is getting comfortable with using new tools and new technologies.
Yeah.
And I don't know if others see that too.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think that the access piece, I think, is really important. I think it goes back to what Scott Galloway said at the beginning, right? That like for a lot of folks with privilege, we've been all right, throughout this, but there are still millions of people who are not okay. And I think Angela had no way of knowing that a pandemic was going to hit when she launched this, right? But in many ways, this was the right time for it because it is in many ways unapologetically centering workers in a workforce solution and keeping that laser focus on folks who are normally shut out. And so I'm just appreciative of this, and I really look forward to seeing what learnings come from it, and how other folks can in some ways get on the bandwagon and be like, maybe this is something we can do as well, and start hunting around for the tech solutions in their own communities and figuring out new partnerships, because that's where the work ultimately needs to go to really have the impact that I think Angela and New Profit and the folks at XPRIZE and those of us at JFF want to see come out of it as well.
Absolutely. I wanted to mention, Jeff mentioned our collaboration, and I think it's such a great opportunity to be able to these pilots, these programs are so essential. The work is so essential because it's a pilot, we have a lot of room to discuss and move around and change things. And I'm glad that we know that it is a pilot, and moving forward with other companies, we won't have all of the entire JFF team and New Profit and everyone there to make sure that we move along. As we bring in new companies, there will be time restraints. There will be cutoff points. And I'm glad that Jeff mentioned the partnership, because as we hire in his state, in his city, in his clients and participants, it's important that I'm able to tell him hey, this is what we're looking for. Can you find them? Because we're ready to hire. Companies are going to come in ready to hire and won't necessarily have the time to do all the soft skills training. So that's why it's great for me to be able to tell Jeff and his team, this is what I'm looking for, this is how many people I'm looking for, and then they're great and experts at what they do, and they can produce and provide, you know, a pipeline of folks that matches, and different companies will come in with different things. That's the goal. So I'm really excited to be a part of this, and to know at the end that we will be able to not only just recruit and share and expose, but hire people. That has to be the goal, to actually hire people. So thanks so much for the opportunity.
This time has gone too fast, folks, but we will go ahead and bring our fearless leader, Dr. Angela Jackson, back into the conversation to wrap us up. It's great talking to everyone.
Good seeing you guys.
This has just been such a fantastic conversation. Yvette, Jeff, Monique, Tamisha, I want to just thank you for being panelists. And also, I just want to let you know that I count you as partners in purpose. And thanks to the audience for today. And what I'm taking away is the words from Monique's grandmother, right? If we do what we've always done, then we're going to get what we've always gotten. When we think about this moment in time, we can build back better. Our workers deserve better, and frankly, our country deserves better. So thank you again for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you at the next session.